Ja, välkomna till Trading Direkt Healthcare måndagen den 20 mars. Idag så kommer Magnus att intervjua Dan Akschuti som är analytiker på Pareto Securities om bland annat Calliditas B-delen av deras Nefigard-studie. Så då säger jag hej till vår expert Magnus Berné.
Ja, men tackar för det.
Du är laddad för intervju förstår jag. Vilka andra bolag kommer du ta upp förutom Calliditas?
Jag tänkte att vi även skulle prata om Biovica. De har ju brutit räkenskapsår. De kom med delårsrapport förra veckan. Det är tredje kvartalet vi tittar på då. Och sen har ju Dan Akschuti varit med på programmet innan. Och då skulle vi titta lite närmare på några bolag som han tidigare har pratat om då och har köprekommendationer för. Och det är biosimilarutvecklaren Xbrane Biopharma, men även forskningsbolaget Vicore Pharma.
Okej, då säger jag varsågod.
Tackar! Hi Dan, welcome to the show.
Hi Magnus, thank you.
Nice to have you with us. Last weekend, Calliditas presented their B part of the Nefigard study. Could you tell us what did they show us?
Yeah, so it showed a long-term effect on the kidney filtration rate, and I think the market was still kind of unsure if this will be a good or negative readout. We had quite a different view on what that readout would mean, and also had no risk adjustment since we initiated on Calliditas. We could go into details here or skip that, but in short, it just means that the drug is really active, even if you don't give it for a long time. So it was only given for 9 months, and the follow-up has now been 2 years, and there's still a clear effect. At the same time, we can see that the effect starts to wane off. So it's an autoimmune disease. It's not going to go away with a drug like Nefigard. So you will have to retreat at one point, and we can kind of gauge a bit where that would make sense, but that we will see.
If we can look at the graph you presented in your analysis, you could see the measurement for the EGFR, a measurement for the kidney function. Could you explain the active arm, the slide we see here, and compared to the placebo? What do we see?
So we see that the placebo is declining much faster. So we see a clear difference at the 9 months time point where we have the actual numbers reported. Then at the 12 months time point, we just have the difference reported, but we can see that this is still fairly similar. And again, as a reminder, the patients were only treated for 9 months. Thereafter, it's kind of an overhang of the effect because the whole disease cascade takes some time. Then at the latest follow-up, the 24 months follow-up, we can see that the difference is still there. So there was clearly a beneficial effect that halted the disease progression. As we can see, it's really stable at 9 months when the drug is given, and that difference remains going forward. But of course, these IgA antibodies, they are produced in a wrong way, let's say. So this cascade with IgGs connecting to them and all that accumulating in the kidneys, etc., producing inflammation there, that is still reoccurring once you stop the drug. So sooner or later, you will have again an effect on the EGFR. And I think we can see that here as well, that the treated group also starts to come down after a long period of non-treatment. So patients will have to get back on drug after a certain pause that will vary from patient to patient.
So from where we are now and these results, as you talk about, there is a potential for retreatments on one or several occasions. What needs to happen before we can see this retreatment? Is just something the doctor could prescribe and say, yeah, now you've been treated one time, we want to treat you again?
Yeah, so I think, as mentioned, it's autoimmune disease. There's something wrong there and it takes some time. It's a slow progressing disease until it shows up in the kidney filtration rate. The drug really stops it at the beginning, more or less. And so after a certain while of no treatment, it will come back and it will make sense to retreat. The drug has been very well tolerated, so very few and mild side effects when they appear. So there's little speaking against a longer period of treatment, but as well as to speaking against as well as to retreatment of the patients.
Your estimates, do you already calculated in the retreatments?
We calculated in a retreatment, but we will have to adjust that as it goes, and it's very difficult to find a clear estimate when, because I think it probably doesn't make any sense either, because the patients will behave differently. And some patients might have a 1-year break. Another patient might have a 12 months course and then a 3 months break. So it's really difficult to model, but to be conservative, one could assume that a patient comes back like 1.5 times per 2 years or something like that. Yeah.
Would you think the price could hold up when it's dosed several times, or should we think that maybe the price might come down a little if we treat the same person several times?
No, I think that has no effect here. The pricing has been based on really quality of life, on the effect that it is giving. So I don't think that will have an impact at all. Yeah, so that's quite standard for chronic drugs. So, I mean, the benefit is, as long as the retreatment gives the same benefit as before, which it should, I don't see an impact on pricing.
The share price graph, and then we can compare it to your recommendation and target price. Here we can see the share price development over the last 12 months, and you don't have a buy recommendation with a target price of 260 kronor, right?
Yes, that is correct. So we see a total upside is around twice of that, but the market, as you see yourself, is not that fast these days in pricing future success, even less so for Swedish biotech companies. So that's why I think within 12 months, 260 is doable, not more. And it really depends now how they can show increasing sales numbers, and also market realizing maybe that the competitor Therapeutics is going to have a tough time selling, even though they go very aggressively about it, much more aggressive than Calliditas. But their drug is clearly inferior. It lacks data on kidney filtration rate as just one aspect of it, but obviously a key one. And I think 260 will be really catalyzed by those two things, like sales of Calliditas and also market realizing that Calliditas has the best-in-class drug here. And just as a little note here, the company, if you could see the expenses on SG&A increased substantially in Q4, which is a really good thing. They should have launched more aggressively, what we always said. And what a surprise, they mentioned that they had record patient enrollment in December despite Thanksgiving and Christmas. But not really a surprise. You increase sales force, you increase the pressure, you will get more patients on the drug. So we should be able to expect record sales in January. So I guess Q1 will show another increase in sales, and so I think that will drive the stock further.
That will be interesting to follow up when we have their Q1 report. Let's move on to Biovica and their Q3 results that they presented last week. What were the key takeaways in the report, you think?
Yeah, I think for Biovica, the company has been very unfortunate with long delays for various reasons. Two big ones not related to the company. But now I think the key take from the call actually was that they have now handled clinical patient samples, so they started the sales process. So doctors are sending in blood samples from patients within the treatment monitoring setting. And they also got feedback from the doctors that they are excited to test this in advanced breast cancer as well. So it's not just where most data is available. So it's a unique test. There's very little like that where one can see if a treatment is working or not, if a cancer is proliferating or not within a short period of time. As per data, actually within 15 days, you can see it already clearly. With just a blood test. So that's usually just a promise that doesn't hold up. But Biovica had a lot of clinical data early on, which is what made us optimistic about it, which is why we believed in it. In the end, it's all about data. And unfortunately, the company is very small. They have a small sales force. They have a good one, but small. It will take some time to get the sales up, but it has started, and I think there's very little now going against Biovica, I would say, this year. So considering where the share price is now and how it's going for them, it's a fairly good outlook for this year.
Since Biovica looks on proliferation and not only if it's cancer or not, do you think there is more value in these kind of tests than just a diagnostic test saying that yes, you have cancer or no, you haven't?
I think the value here is also why sales should start still fast, even though it's again very small sales force, etc. Is because it's in a setting where patients are already treated, so it's not about convincing people to take a screening test if they have prostate cancer or not. There you need to do much more sales work. It's patients that are being treated, and now the oncologists get the tool to see whether the drug is working or not earlier, and very easy with just a blood. You don't need to book a MRI or CT or PET scans or so that will still be done, obviously, but you just get earlier information, and you can over time also base treatment decisions based on that. But it just in the beginning will be added information, and over time when oncologists get comfortable with that, they will also base treatment decisions based on these values.
In December, they set up their US sales team, so they have that in place now. And what needs to happen before the sales can tick up now?
Not much more. So they have actually addressed already quite a few now before being able to handle the patient samples for which they needed a certification of their lab in San Diego. But they contacted quite a few key oncologists that handle around 50% of these National Cancer Institute designated cancer clinics in the US, which are over 30 centers that they addressed. And the initial feedback from the key opinion leaders there was really positive. So I think it's starting. They mentioned they have handled samples. It's not reflected in their quarterly numbers. They have different quotas, right? So the last report was covering numbers until end of January. But now going forward, we should be able to see something. So it's really difficult to say exactly how it's going, but it has started. So that's a good thing.
Another important part in this case would of course be the reimbursement. How do you think this will fit in the sales tick-up?
Yeah, that will be very important, and it's always a bit of you need to prove something first. You need to first have some sales to prove that you have demand to get certain payers to reimburse. Some will come a bit earlier, but this is going to be a bit slow process this year probably. So we should be a bit conservative, but hopefully doctors really want it, and that will drive the demand, which then will be used for getting a reimbursement.
round off and get up the share price graph for Biovica, and then Don, maybe you could tell us, you have a buy recommendation for the share. What is your target price?
For Biovica, it's 32.
Yeah.
So that's.
And what share price triggers do you see for the stock to getting to your target price?
A bit like Calliditas here, it's also about sales now. So we have quite a few companies that finally get to this stage, from development stage to getting a product on the market. So it will be sales here. So clearly sales, reimbursement decisions. But I think the first trigger will be the next report that shows some sales and I think that, and then reimbursement later on, maybe next year or the year after. That it becomes profitable, and also maybe gets into guidelines, the measurement that they're doing, not their test, but what they're measuring.
So let's go on and talk about some cases that we talked about before. So first we're going to revisit Xbrane Biopharma, and they are out in Europe launching Ximluci. Where are we at in the European launch?
So I think it has basically started, and I expect a press release any day now. So we should have a positive trigger imminent for Xbrane. So this is first Europe, and we should also have the resubmission to the FDA any day now. So that will be another trigger, maybe less so than the launch in Europe. But the US is still a key market, as we could see also from a competitor that posted $6.9 million in sales for Q4 in the US. That will be also very important from our view, but maybe the trigger won't be that big for this year. But then next year they can launch in the US as well. So it's also again about sales, but there are some other aspects as well here. Next year, the company believes to be able to launch the pre-filled syringe, a presentation of the drug in the second half of next year. Because right now you have biosimilars coming for Lucentis, Eylea, etc., but they're essentially a bit inferior products, because the originators, they come also as pre-filled syringe, which makes it much easier and safer at lower costs as well. Until then, I think it will still be, they will grab market share, obviously, but once they have a pre-filled syringe, I think that will be a strong boost, as it was for originators when Novartis, for instance, launched Lucentis pre-filled syringe.
We also prepared a share price graph for Xbrane Biopharma, and looking at that, we have that here. And as for the other two cases, this is a buy recommendations from you. Where do you have the target price for Xbrane?
That's at 275 as of now, and it's really based only on the lead drug that they're now launching in Europe and next year, hopefully in the US. They have obviously a bigger pipeline that will follow. And if you look at other companies in this field of biosimilar companies, Xbrane is really multifold undervalued, despite having a platform that has been validated by Biogen, by Stada, by Bausch + Lomb. And I think it has been a lack of news flow and also delays. They did some silly mistakes with the regulatory filing in the US, which caused a 1-year delay. So obviously that deserved some punishment on the share price. But now we expect any day now some nice press release, so the share should get back on track, and then it will also be driven going forward with sales, which should really become significant then in 24, and then going into 25 with hopefully a pre-filled syringe.
Xbrane, do you see any risks? Do you have any development risk of the further pipeline, or biosimilar competition, or where do you see the most, the biggest risk?
Yeah, I think the biggest risk for this company has been taken care of going forward, and that is really the the company is great with their technology, what they managed to do there. But as many small companies, they might have some core competencies, but they lack others, and Xbrane obviously lack their regulatory handling, and that will be taken care of going forward by the partners. So if Biogen keeps their biosimilar business, which is a question, they might spin that off or sell it to someone else, as they indicated in their call, and as part of a strategy of the new CEO there as well. Then that will anyway be taken care of by the partners. So it's not that Xbrane will do that again. Should they do it again, they probably learned now something from the first time with Ximluci. Otherwise, development risk, it's not really there, because it's obviously they have some technical difficulties to solve, but they don't take a risk on the drug or on the human biology part, because it's a biosimilar, so it's on a approved drug that is running out of patent.
Not so long ago, we had Vicore Pharmas CEO Carl-Johan Dalsgaard in the show, and this is the last case you have with you. As for the others, it's a buy recommendation. When we talked to Carl-Johan, we talked about the design of the phase 2b study. What is your view on the design for the phase 2b study, Dan?
Yeah, should have over 300 patients, and to those levels, one placebo. They should include all comers. Now they had only treatment-naive patients, which made it difficult to enroll the trial, but it still made sense, because like that they could really study only their drug. But going forward, it's about getting as fast as possible to the market, and for that they need to run a very good phase 2b study that, if the effect size holds up, where you can clearly see no real side effects, and you see a large gains in lung capacity while the placebo group goes down, so you don't just have stabilization but even increase, then it's hard to see how in a deadly disease like IPF, where the median survival is 3 to 5 years, how it cannot get accelerated or conditional approval before completing the larger subsequent phase 3 study. So I think that is important, that the phase 2b is not going to be a small one that is going to prep for a phase 3, but a really robust big one. Because what then we can also expect in this space is an acquisition after a positive phase 2b readout, or a very good licensing deal. I think that the company will not go forward from a good readout like that by itself anymore, because there's clear interest from big pharma in the space, not just the two that are that have a drug on the market, Roche and Boehringer Ingelheim. It's a blockbuster indication, and that's what pharma loves. So they will go after that after the readout.
Analysis, if I understand correctly, you talked about a competitor within the R&D field, but that have a higher valuation than Vicore. Yeah, could you explain?
Yeah, so we just released a note on Pliant Therapeutics clinical data, which we think is very inconclusive, much less so than what Vicore has reported thus far. It's a lot of details, so one has to maybe read the note, but there we see the valuation is somewhere completely different. It's 14-fold higher than Vicore last time I checked. And for Vicore, I think it will now adjust soon, because we expect in late May, June, that they will come with more than 20 patients after week 24 and week 36. As a reminder, last year they had the readout of 7 patients at week 36 in February, and then they only added 3 patients in November, which was a disappointment. The market knew they need to do a financing, so the stock came down a lot. But now we can expect more than twice as many patients, late May, June-ish. So I think that will be a strong trigger. And from there, we will really be able to gauge also the success of the phase 2b. Yeah.
So let's look on the share price graph for Vicore Pharma. We have that here, and as for the other companies, this is data from 12 months back. And what about your target price for Vicore?
Yeah, so if you look at the target price of 97 and the valuation that would correlate with that, it would still be lower than Pliant Therapeutics, which is at the similar stage with one drug in clinics, lead indication IPF. They have a small other indication with the same drug, as Vicore also pursued some others with smaller studies. So it's a clear mismatch, and one can say that the other one is way too overvalued. But Vicore still looks, for what they have reported, clearly undervalued. The progress has been slow, so they have been punished for that. Financing conditions are much tougher for Vicore than it was for Pliant. They raised $250 million this year, and last summer they raised another $250 million based on the IPF readouts. So they raised $500 million. So it's a completely different game, I guess, for the US biotech compared to the Swedish one. But in the end, what we look at here is future sales of an IPF drug. And for that, we need to have an IPF drug that works. And Vicore's looks at this stage very promising in our view.
Yeah, and with that, I want to thank you for being part of the show.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
Thanks.
Ja, Magnus. Tack så mycket för intervjun, Magnus. Om du ska sätta fingret på en sak som du fick med från Dan Akschuti, vad skulle det vara?
Jag tycker det mest spännande nu, det är ju Calliditas, när vi hade de här B-delen av resultaten från Nefigard som vi pratade om, och validerar ju hela det här caset. Och sen är det alltid kul med rapporter och följa upp, och när man står i det skedet som Biovica gör, att man ska börja ta fart med försäljningen här nu. Det är ju väldigt kul att följa konferenserna här nu. Då kan man ju titta på kvartal till kvartal och förhoppningsvis se hur försäljningen kommer att ticka upp nu då.
Det blir spännande. Då går vi vidare till marknadsuppdatering, och om vi börjar med Braincool då, så byter de marknadsplats. Vart tar de vägen?
Ja, de har ju handlas för närvarande på Spotlight, och nu tar man då steget till First North. Kommer man in i Nasdaq-familjen, och det här förändringen ska göras i slutet av mars är det tänkt, och nu har man då fått ett villkorat godkännande för det här. Och tittar man på kursen, det var en vecka sedan de meddelade det här, så var aktien upp 1,5%. Inte någon jätterörelse, men intressant att man byter lista.
Ja. Ett annat bolag som då har hänt mycket kring, det har varit ganska turbulent kring, Aegirbio. Vad händer där?
Ja, absolut. Det är ju en spillra av sitt forna, om man ser till marknadsvärde, och nu ligger fortfarande på under 100 miljoner kronor. Men aktien var faktiskt upp 130% på tisdagen. Och det här, då var ju faktiskt Nasdaq Stockholms disciplinnämnd ute och pratade om bolagets informationshantering, eller snarare brist på informationshantering. Och man har ju talat då om det skulle behöva gå så långt så att man skulle behöva avnotera bolaget. Vi kanske inte kommer komma dit nu då, eftersom att nu kom det ett besked om ett vitesbelopp, och det skulle motsvara 8 årsavgifter och ligger då på cirka 1,6 miljoner kronor. Men i skenet av att välja på en avnotering eller ett bötesbelopp, så var ju ett bötesbelopp såklart mycket mer positivt än om de skulle behöva avnoteras.
Absolut. Och sen har vi ett förvärv också, och det är medicinteknikbolaget Getinge som är i shoppartagen. Vad är det de köper för någonting?
Ja, och då kommer vi verkligen upp i marknadsvärde såklart. Och det de köper, det är ett bolag som heter Ultra Clean System. Det är alltså en tillverkare av teknik då för ultraljudsrengöring av kirurgiska instrument. Och det är ju ett bolag som ligger inom det intressesfär som Getinge arbetar inom. Vad man skulle kunna säga är ju kanske en fråga, men Magnus, varför tar du upp det här? För att det är ju inte sådär jättestort förvärv de gör.
Det är det ju inte. Hur stort förvärv är det här sett till relation till Getinges storlek då?
Ja, tittar man då, vi kan börja att titta på prislappen som ligger på motsvarande 170 miljoner kronor. Och köpta bolaget här då omsatte 90 miljoner kronor under senast genomförda helåret då 2022. Och för att sätta det här i perspektiv så hela Getinge omsatte ungefär 28 miljarder kronor 2022. Så i skenet av det är ju inte ens 1%.
Nej. Och när gjorde Getinge senast ett större förvärv då?
Ja, om jag inte missminner mig så var det december 2019 när man förvärvade Applikon och då hade man en prislapp på 840 miljoner kronor och så hade man en möjlig tilläggsbetalning av maximalt 630 miljoner kronor som var lite större. Och då är vi faktiskt före tidpunkten för pandemin briserade eftersom det här var i december 2019. Sen dess har det ju varit något förvärv till, men inte av den här liksom magnituden. Så, och om det här är ett första steg mot att nu kanske man kan komma med fler förvärv, det får vi väl se.
Det får vi se. Vi går vidare då. Index Pharma presenterar nya resultat från Pharmaceuiticals-studien för Cobitolimod och aktien är upp 15%. Therapeutics nådde i sitt primära mål i fas 1B. Enligt bolaget så hade RMC 035 goda farmakokinetiska egenskaper och en gynnsam säkerhetsprofil och aktien var upp lite mindre men 2% ändå. Och då måste jag fråga dig Magnus, vad är egentligen farmakokinetikstudie?
Ja, då gör man ju studier på hur en läkemedelskandidat omsätts inom kroppen. Och då kan man fråga sig varför detta är intressant. Jo, man vill ju veta då när man ska göra vidare studier vad man ska ha för dosering. Då behöver man ju veta på dels att man får en effekt av läkemedlet och hur det bryts ner i kroppen. Och att det kommer till rätt ställen av det man ska behandla. Men du behöver också, när man kan man få veta på vad du har för halveringstid och hur det ser ut. Ja, men då får du också ett svar på när ska jag sätta in nästa dos. Det är sådana här studier man genomför då. Och vill man veta mer i frågan så vi har ju även nämnt det här i Magnus svarar och förklarar tidigare avsnitt. Så det kan man ju titta om man vill veta mer och klicka sig vidare.
Om man vill uppdatera sig lite där ja. Då var det allt vi hade idag. Tusen tack Magnus.
Ja men tack själv.
Och tusen tack till er som har tittat. Ge oss gärna en tumme upp. Prenumerera på kanalen om inte ni gör det redan så missar ni inte våra kommande avsnitt. Nästa avsnitt är i alla fall på måndag om en vecka. Se oss då!